We got lots of people here.
Seeing lots of folks coming in, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, Louis. Hello, Nick.
Hello. A lot of familiar faces and names. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll get started here in a few minutes. There's Dave. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks.
Tracy, out of curiosity, what platform do you normally use for these types of meetings? Is it normally Teams, or do you use something different?
Zoom.
Zoom?
Yep.
Timely. All right.
Yeah. But we wanted a level playing field for today, so we very consciously went to the other. We have some small groups that meet that are using Teams. And in terms of the membership, Teams is probably the largest. The bulk of the group has Teams, but there's some WebEx out there. There's some Ring Central. So yeah, as you'd expect, it's across the board.
Good, good. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. That's perfect.
BJ, glad to see you join us. We've missed you. You haven't been able to come for a while.
It's been a nightmare over here.
Well, I'm sorry. We call that job security on a good day. The rest of the days we don't talk about. Roy, nice to have you with us. We haven't seen you in a while as well.
Thank you.
So you said we have roughly 30 registered, Tracy. How many members are there of the CIO circle?
I think we're over 65.
Oh,
So about half the group's pretty good.
that's actually great attendance.
Yep. Yeah, this is a great group of people. Let's give it one, maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll kick it off. We may have a few more hop in. Now, Louis, are you seeing any others logging in at the moment?
I got it. Yep.
All right, well, in the interest of time, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining us. We're excited to have such a great partner in ATC who came to us with this idea about, hey, there's a lot of interest out there, obviously in Teams and in the whole unified communication space. We think 8x8 and Zoom has some great stories to share. Would love to bring them to the table, and they agreed to partner with ATC and ourselves as well to share with you some outstanding direction and where they're going. So they're going to kind of go through presentation today as if they would to a Gartner or some of those folks in a briefing format, but we've allotted for being able to give plenty of time in the background for you all to answer, ask and answer questions amongst yourselves. So with that, I will go off video and mute myself as well, so you can hopefully not hear the fire alarm in my house whose battery is dying and chirping every minute. And we'll get started and let the experts take you through this, led by Nick here. So thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
Well, thank you, Tracy, and hello all. Thank you for joining us today for the CIO Circles Executive Briefing presented by ATC. My name's Nick Inger. I'm CTO and Senior Consultant here at ATC. I know this is one of the first executive briefings that we've presented for the CIO Circle, so I wanted to kind of lay out the framework of today's conversation. First, the layout's going to consist of a 5 to 10 minute introduction by myself, followed by a 15 to 20 minute segment from one of our vendors. We will start out with Zoom, and then we will move into a 15 to 20 minute conversation about 8x8. The purpose of today's call is to educate the CIO Circle on the solutions that we are seeing as red hot in the marketplace. We're trying to differentiate these vendors and solutions where it can otherwise be difficult to be a normal consumer and try to differentiate them. During these segments, if you have questions, please enter them into the chat window, and we will either answer them during the presentation or during the live Q&A at the end. We're going to try to leave about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for actual live commentary. The live dialogue is key to the interaction on your end. We want this to be what you want it to be. We want to get the most out of this conversation. So the more you can provide, the more prodding, poking, dig a little deeper on certain topics. Give us the use case that you guys have in your environment, and we'll throw it out to the group and talk live about it. We will get as granular as you want it to be. The more interaction, the better. So today's conversation, I'm very excited about it. It's one that we have every day within ATC. We're talking more about enterprise collaboration than we're talking about any other topic out there in IT. It has grown like wildfire since the work from home orders came out in March. We've seen a ton of growth from vendors like Microsoft and Zoom and 8x8 and RingCentral, WebEx, Slack, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're like most organizations, departments outside of making some of these decisions, they're deciding what products and solutions to you. Show of hands out there, how many folks out there have at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 collaboration products within their environment that they're now supporting that they didn't know about originally? I know I do. Even on my laptop here, I have 4 different collaboration tools. Did IT select all of these? Most likely not. So that's what our conversation is going to be about today. Again, myself, Nick Inger, CTO, Senior Consultant here at ATC. Also have on Ken Westerman, Cloud Solutions Engineer from Zoom, and Brian Bonebrake, Cloud Solutions Engineer from 8x8. So before we get started, who am I and what gives me the credentials to be in front of you here today? ATC, Advanced Technology Consulting. We're an independent IT consulting practice here in Westchester, Ohio, focused on 4 core areas: voice, data, cloud, and security. Collaboration is an umbrella topic that touches on all 4 of these buckets. Our approach is completely solution and vendor agnostic. Need more proof about being vendor agnostic? We have 2 of the biggest names in the industry going toe-to-toe here for you today. In fact, we represent 250 different vendors, making sure we ultimately align our clients with the vendors and solutions that meet their business requirements, as well as provide a strategic vision long-term for many years down the road, regardless of the vendor, regardless of the technology. Today we're hearing from 8x8 and Zoom. 8x8 is a leader in the UCaaS and CCaaS space globally. 9 years have landed them in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Unified Communications as a Service. Without a doubt, a tried and true vendor. Additionally, we have Zoom. Everyone on this call has likely been on a Zoom call, right? They are the industry leader for meetings right now. We'll talk more about what makes their product so special. They have launched a voice platform in the past 18 months that has already solidified their spot on the Magic Quadrant for UCaaS and meetings. More on that in a moment. So let's talk about collaboration. There's a giant in the room, Microsoft Teams. It's the platform we're on right now. Teams has had a huge adoption over the last 9 months. At last report, they have 85 million daily active users. Does anyone remember where Teams came from? Anyone, like where it started? Of course, it came from Skype for Business. We understand that. That's sunset for next year, 2021. But it ultimately began with a competition over Slack. Slack was a developer's application used between other developers. Microsoft was set to buy Slack just a few years ago for $8 billion and decided against it. They wanted to go head to head. So they came up with Microsoft Teams and blew it up ever since Office 365 included it with its licensing. Now, since the work from home is mainstream, folks rolled out Teams. Even to the folks that were non-techie users are now using Teams like it was their #1 application within their environment. And I think ultimately it's for the So out of the box, Microsoft Teams, they have the functionality of being able to collaborate within your environment with internal employees, but also external employees. But we're hearing every day, can I use it as my phone system? Can I ultimately displace that legacy PBX that I either have in the cloud or in my closet and replace it with Teams? The answer is yes, yes you can. Teams interface as your phone system works, but you need to understand the caveats associated with it to maximize the investment. Today's conversation is going to be able to show you those caveats as well as many others. So out of the box, Microsoft Teams lacks the rich PBX features and functionality within a typical PBX environment. You can check their website. They have 35 features and functionality. They lack things such as integration with analog devices. You can't do it. It doesn't have a strong SLA. What about SMS and MMS? Doesn't have it. It says it's roadmapped. It's been roadmapped for over a year. So enter in 8x8 and 8x8's ability for direct routing. Direct routing gives the ability to leverage a tried and true UCaaS provider globally that provides you 120 different features and functionality. It includes contact center. It includes SMS. It includes the ability to integrate with analog devices. Direct routing is the alternative to Microsoft Teams PBX, or voice as they call it. Next, we're going to be talking about Zoom. We're on today's meeting. We have 25 to 30 folks on today's call. Inherently, Microsoft Teams typically has issues when you get above 25 to 30 users. That's what Zoom strives on, or thrives on, I should say. Their video conferencing is second to none. Their room solutions just work. And for me, talking about just work as an Apple user, the product is simple. I hit join and it joins and it's very easy. My grandma can use it. So for me and from my standpoint, Zoom is the easiest meetings and collaboration tool that we have out there. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Ken. I'm going to start out with some tough questions. This group is mostly from Cincinnati. We are fairly conservative by nature here in Cincinnati. I know there's been a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation about security around the Zoom platform. I'm going to let them explain the Zoom platform itself, but I really want to dive deep into the security component because we hear day in and day out about concerns about security here in Cincinnati. So without further ado, Ken, take it away.
Well, Nick, thank you for the great introduction, and thank you for hosting us here today. We really appreciate being on the call with you guys and with 8x8. So yeah, I mean, we'll get to security later on, but understand that Zoom takes security incredibly seriously. One of the things that we did during the pandemic, as everyone was aware, we stopped production of all of our feature functionality for 90 days to focus strictly on security. And on that focus, we actually also acquired our first company ever in a company called Keybase, which has helped us to launch end-to-end meeting encryption, which we just launched about a month ago. But to jump into this, we have some security slides later on. But so Zoom's platform ultimately, right? We have this ability as this communications platform. We have become, as you said earlier, this verb right out there in the lexicon people are using today, and that's in part to the meetings application, but it's not just the meetings application that works for us. Here in our product wheel, there's a couple different colors, but the light blue color helps us to become this world-class, frictionless, unified communications platform. That communications platform starts with video and the meetings, of course, which is what we built out first. But we also layered in things like VoIP and PSTN audio. There's a cross-platform, group messaging communications tool. There's a feature-rich, robust video webinar application tool that scales to thousands and thousands of employees. But then again, it's also that PBX as well, which is now on your desktop, and in the cloud. At the bottom here, we have our developer suite, which we have a really robust API and mobile desktop SDK solution. If you heard through our Zoomtopia, we're also releasing a new feature-rich SDK solution in the near future. But the result of those things are things like an ever-growing app marketplace, featuring over 720 integrations with services, things like Slack and Salesforce, HubSpot, LinkedIn, and many, many more. And then finally, in the orange, we have a conference room solution. It's a standalone room solution. It's our software-based conference room solution with digital signage and scheduling displays that are fully included and inclusive. And if you can leverage that across your legacy system as well. So, say you have a WebEx, or you have a GoToMeeting or a Teams, you can actually bring those into the Zoom cloud via our conference room connector. And so all of those things help make Zoom's platform this truly feature-rich and robust platform. On the next slide, we'll talk just quickly about what our architecture looks like. As many of you are aware, our CEO, Eric Yuan, came from WebEx. And when he left there because he was disgruntled that WebEx didn't want to look at things differently, he said, well, let's look at things differently. And so, there's a very traditional architecture of the way things are done. And then there's the way Zoom is looking at things. And I won't go into incredible detail here, but, Zoom looks at things, from a very different perspective. We built things from the ground up. We're cloud native, and we address the most difficult part of being a cloud communications company first, and that's video. Other approaches to data have attempted to add video to an aging or pre-existing conference room solution or chat tool or telephony system, but video requires the most intense computing resources. And so for us, we looked at that first and tried to tackle that first. And as you are all aware, we tackled that incredibly well. There are a few different aspects there, right? To ensure that video and voice have that best quality. And so, we leverage a distributed network first. And so, again, we have 19 data centers across the globe and growing. We're adding 2 more data centers this year as we speak. And so you're on a public network until you hit one of our first data centers. And from there, you're backboned all the way across on our private network. That helps to reduce the latency and increase the reliability of what's happening. The next couple of things are multimedia routing and multi-bit rate encoding, which, simply put, we're not going to process things in the cloud and push these things down, right? We use stream routing, which provides a high efficiency, high performance, feature-rich experience. Legacy systems don't use those things, and so they try to force the client's devices to give up some of that feature-rich or resource-intensive kind of computing, and so we're not trying to do that, right? But the other important piece to think about here is the network quality layer of service, and network QoS is incredibly important when you're sitting in an office, but also when you're not sitting in an office, you need to have some kind of layer of service of that quality, and so Zoom allows the application itself to be proactive with our quality of service within the application, which optimizes that video and audio experience and screen sharing experience. And it allows for the best result possible, no matter what kind of environment you're sitting in, whether you're in a home, you're in an office, you're in a Starbucks, you're always going to get that best possible experience. And as Nick mentioned on the next slide, you'll see that we've become, because of our architecture and our back end, for the 5th consecutive year, we are the leader in the Magic Quadrant for the meetings solution. We take much pride in that, right? And our focus is on the user-centric design, service reliability, and flexible consumption models. Again, we have a really robust feature set and expanding portfolio that gives Zoom, the ability to have users across any use case, and also our flexibility. Also, as Nick mentioned, which we don't have on this slide deck because Gartner just released it last week, but we are also a leader in the Magic Quadrant. We have GA'd our phone product about 22 months ago. And so we're incredibly excited to say that we are one of the 5 leaders in Gartner's Magic Quadrant in the UCaaS section, which we'll have out in marketing consumption sometime later today or early tomorrow. On the next few slides, though, Nick had mentioned the security piece, and you guys being from Cincinnati, that's great. I'm from Wisconsin, so I kind of understand the conservative side of things. But as I mentioned, Zoom took our security, from the very beginning incredibly seriously. But as everyone saw, we took it on the chin, if you will, during the pandemic. Zoom was built out, admittedly for that enterprise side of things. We had about 20 to 30 million daily active users before the pandemic. And at some point in time, within about a month and a half of the pandemic, we broke 300 million daily active users using our product. And so, that ended up causing some issues because those people all weren't enterprise or business level users. They actually were people, like Nick said, his grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, people using it every single day to communicate with their family because the product is so easy to use, but that caused a bunch of security type issues. And so for 90 days, Zoom took a step back and said, let's focus on fixing those issues to make it seamless so that anyone can be secure while using Zoom. And so some of the things that we ended up doing were, we changed our encryption, 128, 256-bit GCM encryption for real-time communication and content. We changed out role-based user security. So now we actually added in additional security levels for hosts and admins and guests coming in. We watermarked screenshots. We've changed the passcode protection so that now you must have a passcode or a waiting room depending on your level of service. So the higher up you go for the enterprise, the less you have to have. But for the basic users, you must protect yourself somehow. We changed out our single sign-on, and we've done more around that. We also finalized our HIPAA compliancy with our phone piece. We're working on our high trust at this point in time, and also we're working on our FedRAMP to become L4 certification with the Department of Defense sponsoring us. So we've done a whole bunch around that. But the other big thing that we did too is we acquired a company called Keybase. And so Zoom was very proud to say that we were the first to, acquire this company. It was our first acquisition, which helped us to do end-to-end meeting encryption. But again, as I mentioned, security is top of mind for us. Customer security and compliance are huge for us. Security programs are unique to each customer, and we know that. And so we're continuously, looking at and trying to assess what's going to transform our security to help our users and enable our users to become more secure. We've embedded security in every single thing that we're doing today to self-service, permissions to act, guardrails, and trust. The next slide is just kind of talking around a little bit of our security compliance. So as I mentioned, we are actually now publishing, so you can go out to zoom.us/security to find out more about that. But we're publishing our release notes at this point in time that cover all of our new platform and feature functionality. We have reports available under our NDAs with SOC 2 compliance, executive summary penetration testing reports as well. The next few slides just kind of talk through some of what that security happens to look like. So again, as I mentioned, we did a whole bunch of looking in security for that 3-month window. And so we changed authentication and two-factor authentication. We've given you now the ability to do video previews. So as people are joining your meeting, you can actually see them versus just seeing their name. So you actually know, is that Ken Westerman versus, say, Nicholas or someone else. There's also attendee consent for recording, which we added in there. The next slide talks about the pre-meeting security settings for hosts. So again, as I mentioned, now we're forcing or enabling the ability to have waiting rooms in place, right? So now people just can't join into your meeting. They have to either come through a waiting room or they have to know the passcode. Both of these things allow for that security-rich feature functionality to be there for our users so that they can't be, Zoom bombed for lack of a better word. We also have the ability not to join by domain. So a lot of our schools were saying waiting rooms and passwords just weren't good enough for them. They wanted more security on the back end. And so we came out with a release so that now you can actually set up your domain so that now an EDU or wherever you happen to be, set that up so that now as a student coming in, as long as you have a student ID, you can then join that meeting instead. And so we're trying to, of course, enforce security, but also make it easier for people to leverage and use Zoom while being fully secure.
Yeah, so
The next
Ken,
slide is about our
as we've seen this kind of transform over the past 9 to 12 months with Zoom, it seems as though maybe early on was a little exposed on the security side, but now as we're looking at it from a holistic standpoint with all these other collaboration products, it's almost like you leapfrog the competition on security and have become the what you should thrive to be as a collaboration tool in the security world.
I would say you're 100% correct, right? Again, admittedly, we looked at things only from an enterprise standpoint. And so while, when the Zoom bombing happened, all of our enterprise customers were completely secure. They knew what they had to do to secure their platforms and their users. There weren't any issues there. The problem broke out with, again, my grandfather, my aunts, your grandfathers and aunts and uncles using the tool. But Zoom said, okay, well, we can either say, well, you know what, we don't care about them and let's not worry about that. Or as Eric said, no, we care about all of our users. We want all of our users to be secure when using Zoom to talk to whomever they want to communicate with. And so, we took it again on the chin, but 90 days we spent focusing strictly on security. We had something close to 75 releases that were all security-based released during that 90-day window that addressed all of the problems that people kept bringing up to us saying, your platform's not secure. And then we went steps and steps and steps further. We ended up, again, acquiring a company called Keybase to put in encryption. And so we went even, I think, further than where we needed to have gone. And I think people are appreciating that now when they're seeing that we are, again, the preeminent player in the video space and in the UCaaS space, and with security in mind to kind of on top of that. The next slide is just going to kind of talk to you about the in-meeting security settings for hosts. And I won't name them all, but as you can see here, we have given the hosts the ability now to lock meetings, remove people, turn people off, report users that are being nefarious. And so we've done a whole bunch more to ensure that whilst you're in the meeting, you have the ability to secure and to host and as the host. The next slide also kind of talks the same thing. It's just again around in-meeting security settings for the hosts. They have that ability to send a private message to an attendee to ask them to stop doing something. They can customize waiting room messages. They can admit one at a time or all. They can also clear messages and things of that nature. So again, we've given the host the ability to truly secure and lock down their meeting while having the most robust feature application they can. The next slide is kind of leaving the security side and thinking more about our scalability. I get asked every day, well, how did you guys go from 30 million daily active participants to 300 million? Well, that's because we built this thing out originally from the ground up to host 300 million people, right? We weren't thinking on a small scale. We leverage our own proprietary compression technology. We offer a 4.9 SLA uptime, and we're an active architecture across the board. So, for all of our meetings and phone architecture, there's limited risk for interruption of services. The next slide is just our, as I mentioned, we have 19 data centers today. That's growing to 21 data centers. Here's just a quick snapshot of where our data centers happen to be. We are truly a global company, as this data center list reports and shows, with native PSTN capabilities. The next few slides, as Nick had mentioned, you can build if you want, Nick, you can build out the whole slide if you'd like. Our Zoom Phone. So a long way over the last 22 months, roughly. Again, as Nick had mentioned, we are now in the Magic Quadrant, and that's awesome for us. It was built from the ground up, though, from our phone system. And we've got amazing momentum around what that phone system looks like. In the last 12 months, we've added 500,000 Zoom Phone users. And 22% of those users are coming to us net new, and they're buying Zoom Meeting and Zoom Phone together as a complete collaboration feature. Of those, feature sets are coming to us because we have over 400 feature releases for our UCaaS product. We did just in the past year. We offer a one license for 40 plus countries, which is simple to purchase, deploy, and manage. It's incredibly cost effective. $15 for us as that service seat actually is $15. There are no hidden costs with E911 or anything else that are baked in there. We have flexible deployment options. And then, of course, an extendable CCaaS and carrier integration platform to leverage the likes of Five9, Genice, and Contact Genesis with your CCaaS providers to bring that into your Zoom experience, and also the ability to leverage PSTN connectivity, in other countries where we don't offer services today. The next slide, just a quick snapshot of where our countries happen to be. So as I mentioned, we're in 42 countries today and growing. We are currently in beta today with India and beta today with China. And so we hope to have both of those released sometime in the next couple of months. The last thing is our Zoom Phone application. So as Nick mentioned at the very beginning, Zoom has been integrated with Microsoft Teams for quite some time when it comes to the meetings application. Let's face it, Teams has a really robust internal communication platform. It's hard to beat that platform. But as Nick also mentioned, their external communication platform does lack in a whole bunch of areas. And that's where Teams has opened things up to people like 8x8 and also to Zoom. Zoom has a meetings bot that we've offered for quite some time that allows you to open up a Zoom meeting within the Microsoft Teams environment. You can leverage Zoom chat as well if you'd like to. But that's been there for a while. But we've had companies come to us and say, we would love to have the ability to, launch a Zoom Phone also within that Teams experience. And so currently today, we are in beta testing with Zoom Phone as a cross launch out of Microsoft Teams. So the ability now will have you to, whilst you're in chat, whether one-on-one, one-on-many, or to also leverage your AD connection, the ability to either start a meeting or make a phone call from Teams using the Zoom experience. Zoom understands that our customers want that best in breed experience. They don't want to have to fumble around with things. So our cross launch is seamless. You click on the Zoom icon, click on make a call, you confirm that person, and the phone launches for you automatically. And so it's really that seamless experience to cross launch that, to leverage the PBX that we have going for you there. That's going to really give that customer that super rich Zoom experience that everyone wants to have on that back end. And with that, I'll stop talking about my 15-minute mark, and I'll turn it to Nick then.
Thank you, Ken. Much appreciated. So before we get moved over to the 8x8 side, I want to delineate the difference between Microsoft Teams native environment, so Microsoft Teams, and utilizing that for the PBX functionality within your enterprise versus what Microsoft Teams calls direct routing. So essentially you have an option to make, or a selection to make. One, go straight Microsoft, go to Microsoft directly, buy your entire phone system through Microsoft, use their SIP trunking for your phone system, use their features and functionality. Or on the other side, leverage a partner in the direct routing scenario in that UCaaS provider, whether it's Zoom or 8x8 or any of the others that are able to do this, utilize their platform for the PBX functionality, the meetings functionality if you'd like, the chat functionality if you'd like, the contact center functionality if you like. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along, but I just want to kind of delineate that. What does Microsoft Teams voice look like? Whether you go Microsoft directly and supported by Microsoft 100%, or on the flip side, you go direct routing, you still use the Teams environment natively, so your end users still look and feel the same as a Teams environment, but on the backside, you're leveraging a partner like Zoom or 8x8. So thank you for that, Ken. Moving on, Brian, welcome.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to jump into our story. I know we have a lot to cover, and when we start talking about a platform company like 8x8, like Zoom, there's a lot of facets to it. So today's just going to be a little bit of a technical teaser, if you will, around who 8x8 is, and then we'll cap this with a little bit of a conversation around our co-opetition, which is Microsoft Teams. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this. Next slide. Thank you. The 5 big things about our platform that I tell everybody to try to take away, because there is so much information, are these 5 things here. I'm going to talk to you and show you some maps later in the presentation, but we have global coverage. Over 15 private data centers and 8 public data centers, in addition to a relationship with Oracle. We're able to reach over 120 countries today. We can offer 47 countries of unlimited calling, and of those 47, 38 of them, we can provide full PSTN replacement. So we can reach wherever your locations may be. Actionable insights and intelligence. Since we're a single platform of engagement, we're also a single platform of intelligence, meaning we don't have a handshake agreement or an API hook to provide any sort of feature set. Since it's all holistically our platform, we own the entire stack. We're able to gather insight and analytics across our platform. This lowest cost TCO, including mix and match, what that simply means is that we're able to right size our licenses to that persona. So if it's the intern in the corner who's only ever ordering lunch for people, then they're not going to need as robust of a license as maybe one of your top sales folks that are calling all over the world to try to close those deals. So being able to mix and match those licenses can really help drive down the total cost of ownership for our solution. Low risk partner, that's simply the story of who we've been and who we are. We've been in the market for over 33 years. We started in the video compression space, moved into audio compression, cellular, and then finally into UC about 18 years ago. And we were born in the cloud. We never started as an on-prem service. We decided we wanted to own our entire stack in the cloud that 18 plus years ago. And because of that 33 years plus being a publicly traded company, it's a company you can rely on. We're not a flash in the pan. We've been around the block. And then that last point kind of circles back to that second point. Since we have an entire platform that we own with a single login, an administrator can actually access the entire suite of communications products that we have. You don't have to worry about additional logins, additional applications to manage. You can access it all from our admin console. So if you could, next slide, please. So we're going to dive just a little bit of who we are as a company and how we approach our platform and our technology. And then, like I said, we'll cap with that Microsoft Teams conversation because I know that's important as well. But I did mention it's co-opetition. We can compete directly against Teams, but we've come up with some really exciting integrations along the way. This top point's a really great one. We saw a massive expansion in use across the globe as Zoom did when COVID hit. The numbers there are in and around our standalone meetings platform. So not our whole unified communications suite, but it uses the same infrastructure as our entire unified communications suite. We were actually about 150,000 monthly active users in March of this year. This was globally. And then we skyrocketed to over 21 million on our standalone meetings product, which was insane growth. And we did it all without any hiccup in service. And some really heartwarming stories came out of that. One of my favorite is simply Italy. We provided communication services to over 2/3 of post-secondary education in Italy. And they didn't miss a beat. They were able to continue educating their students and continue to be productive, which is a pretty cool position to be in. And then a couple of these additional points are just all about that engineering focus as an organization. We have over 200 patents awarded today and over 100 more pending. And it's always an interesting conversation. I always, when somebody mentions, hey, we have a bunch of patents, I'm like, well, are they awarded or are they pending? Because that's two very different things. And the fact that we're constantly innovating and constantly improving on the product at no extra cost to our clients is, I think, a huge value to the 8x8 story. 9-time UCaaS Gartner Magic Quadrant leader as of the most recent Gartner Magic Quadrant release. And what makes this super exciting in our book is that this stood even the expansion to the global market. So it used to be just US based, and now they have this global Magic Quadrant. And yes, there's a lot more competition in that quadrant, or in that Magic Quadrant, but we maintained and even improved our position slightly in the CCaaS space, where we're a 6-time CCaaS Gartner Challenger. And rumor has it someday soon, it's obviously not in this Gartner, maybe not even next year's Gartner, but we might be competing with Zoom on the conferencing and meetings Magic Quadrant. So Zoom is on 2 Magic Quadrants, we're on 2 Magic Quadrants, and maybe 3 in the future. So next slide, please. Security is on the tip of everybody's tongue. It was born, since we were born in the cloud, we were also born with a strong security backbone. This is not a change, not a response to anything in the market. This is just who we've been since our inception. Here's a list of a few of those security compliance and certifications that we have. High Trust being most recent, we've acquired the High Trust certification. We've always been HIPAA compliant, but we wanted to get that extra level of certification and confidence for our clients. We've also are working on our FedRAMP. We actually have all the precursors for FedRAMP. We just are going through that audit process, and it takes some time. So we imagine mid to late next year, we'll have our FedRAMP certification. And then a couple other I like to mention that are not on here. We're pre-approved on NASPO and PEPM boards. These are boards used by the SLED industry, so state, local education, and defense, to acquire technology. And our pre-approval is huge. We're, I believe it's NASPO. We're the only one directly approved. Some of our competitors are approved through third-party organizations, but that can give you that extra layer of confidence that we're a right choice, regardless of your industry. Next slide, please. I always like to put this up here because it's just not Brian Bonebrake being a great presenter or orator. It's all about being proven in the market. You're going to see a mix of third-party analysts. You're going to see channel organizations as we work through an indirect channel with our partners like ATC. So you have Frost & Sullivan, Forrester, TechTarget, Gartner, all saying the same thing. A platform that you can trust, reliable, and great partnerships. These, and Gartner is what we're talking about today a lot, so you'll see them on there. That should be updated to 2020, but nonetheless, we do this all with our single platform here. So you're going to find telephony, you're going to find collaboration, not only through our meetings, so our voice and video conferencing solution, but that collaboration also extends to conference rooms. So you can actually have an all-in-one solution with 8x8 and our contact center solution. And our most recent one, we're probably going to add another vertical here, is CPaaS. So communications platforms as a service, because that next frontier for communications, it's all about how do you more seamlessly integrate with the world around you. Next slide, please. And speaking of that platform, you'll see this trend, these X series licenses, X2s, X8s, X4s. We actually have the whole gamut, X1 through 8, X4 and below being our unified communications licenses. And we actually had an X5, but we phased that out. So now it's X6 and above our contact center licenses. And we even have lobby licenses. And that's what I mean by it's all about sizing the license to that user to help drive down that cost for your communication solution. So you can see here a mixed environment of your sales folks or customer support being on different licenses from one another. But since it's all still one holistic ecosystem, it all works and functions together as a single system. Next slide,
I think,
please.
Brian, you bring up a good point here is oftentimes we get stuck in the rut of licensing and we've purchased this licensing and maybe we can't repurpose it for another use. What you're saying here, because this is as a service model, if I started out as an X7 license and I wanted to go down to an X2 license because I don't need that call center functionality anymore, I have the ability to do so, correct?
Yeah, we have the flexibility to reassign licenses to users as you see fit. So I always kind of say it's kind of like I don't know, a schmuck at a grocery store. I don't know why that example came to my mind, right? So if one employee leaves an organization, you still have the smock, right? You can hand it to the next employee that might start with your organization. So yeah, you have that ability to reassign, shift licenses around as you see fit for your organization. And here's just a brief overview. I'm not going to deep dive. Again, today is just a teaser, but it gives you a little bit of idea of what I meant by persona, right? You have in that general, that X2 license. That's our standard business license because it comes with that ability to have a free integration, single sign-on. It's going to have 14 countries of unlimited calling. Those users can be in call queues versus maybe our X1 who only has US and Canada calling. And then you have your X4, which is going to be our supervisor or admin license. So it's going to really allow you to peel into additional analytics and information about the behavior within your system. But then it's also going to give you capabilities like Barge Monitor Whisper. And so if you want to actually create these call center light situations for your organization, because you're maybe not quite ready to step into a full contact center solution, we have a lot of that built in right into our UC environment. And that's all not to forget to mention our contact center. X6 is our most popular business license, but our X8 is our most powerful at opening up speech analytics, quality management, and live monitoring capabilities. So you can keep an eye on your employees and agents regardless of where they sit. So next slide,
Hey,
please.
Brian,
Yeah,
I don't
go
know
ahead, David.
I don't know if your slides are synced up with what you're talking about. I don't think with me they are. So you guys might want to take a look at that.
Okay, I'm seeing X2, X4, X6, X8. Is anybody else not seeing that?
I'm seeing uniquely qualified with all owned technology is what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's something on my side or if everybody else is seeing it.
Yeah, I'm seeing the slide X2, X4, X6, X8.
I see it fine.
All right,
David, it's
keep
'cause you're
going. I'll
retired.
figure it out.
All right, no worries. Sorry about that, David. If you could, next slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned, I wanted to give you guys a strong foundation of who we were because of that whole statement of being co-opetition. My CEO is notorious for saying that as it's true. There's essentially 4 go-to-market strategies for 8x8 and Microsoft Teams. One of those is the native Teams experience, which I'm going to dive into here, where that end user is actually none the wiser as to 8x8's involvement. IT is obviously going to be involved. It's configuration and so on and so forth, but end user would have no idea because it's truly that Microsoft Teams native experience, all the way to a sliding scale of it might make more sense to just use 8x8 instead of Microsoft Teams. And in between, we have hybrid models and sort of dual application models. But I'm not going to dive too much into those. We're going to talk about the native Teams experience. So next slide, please. I love this slide because there's so much that can be talked about here. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that user experience is like. With our solution, a Teams user gets to use the native team experience. We don't leverage bots or plugins or Chrome extensions or anything like that. They're going to use the native Teams desktop app, mobile app, or Teams enabled endpoint. And if you know much about how communications flows through Teams, once from that client, it will actually go through the Team services stack, O365 services stack, and then into Azure. And if you were leveraging Teams directly, it would then try to connect to a PSTN carrier and route your call. But what we've done is installed Microsoft certified session border controllers in Azure, and then are routing that call back to our cloud. We're actually pulling the user out of the Microsoft Teams calling platform and leveraging ours. So you're not using Microsoft's call queues and ring groups and auto attendants and IVRs and analytics or their Barge Monitor Whisper features. You're using ours. So that immediately adds a lot of depth and breadth to your enterprise telephony solution. And it's something that I think is a big differentiator. That in the market, you're going to start seeing a term floating around. It has a couple different names because nobody's really settled on one. But it's what we've developed here is a UCaaS-backed direct routing solution because you're getting an entire unified communication seat because you're still going to choose an X series license that makes sense for your organization and for that user. And it's going to pair right along with Teams. So it's going to have the right number of countries, the right number of features and functionalities, but it also explains or allows for really interesting disaster recovery solution as well. So if Teams goes down for any reason, since you have a full X series license and unified communication suite license with 8x8, all the intelligence is housed in 8x8. We're servicing your numbers. You can actually simply direct your employees to log into an 8x8 client and continue to be productive, continue to use the same phone number they have, be part of the same call queues and ring groups and call flows as they were before. And even when they log into that 8x8 client, they're going to see all their missed calls, all their recent calls, all their voicemails. All of that is still going to be there because it's all being housed in 8x8. And this is all to not forget to mention all the other things that come as a benefit of direct routing, like that ability to integrate with SIP-based devices, analog devices, overhead paging, ATAs, DEC phones, all of these other things that's sort of innate to that standard direct routing out in the market also come along with this. And then again, not to forget to mention contact center fully integrated with this solution as well. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to cruise through these because we did cover a lot of these as we move through them. If you could hit next slide, please. Enterprise telephony, we talked all about that, right? Depth and breadth, you're using our system. You're, in our mind, I think one of the big differentiators too is ease of configuration. If you were born into Microsoft, maybe you might consider configuring Microsoft easier than other systems. But in our mind, and sort of a head-to-head comparison, that ease of configuration and management, we believe, is much easier to have in 8x8. Integrations. We have over 35 out-of-the-box integrations. Many of those are CRM systems. We have over 30 publicly available APIs. So it's not only about our ability to integrate into other technology, but for them to integrate into us. And then we have a general philosophy as an organization that we're willing to take on or create any integration as long as the API exists to perform the task you're looking for. I am literally asked daily, hey, can you integrate into this? Can you integrate into that? And I'll go out to the API page of that particular software, look to see if they have the APIs, the most common ones, screen pops, click to dials, data injection. If they're there, then great. Yes, we can develop that. Obviously, a professional service involved to make a custom integration, but we can do it. And then we doubled down on that with our purchase of a CPaaS company about a year ago. We make no secret of the fact we make acquisitions, but we always do it with the intent to cannibalize the IP and roll the code base into our platform. And that has just really opened our platform to be able to reach out and connect with the world around us. Next, global calling capabilities. I'll save that for some later slides. So if we could cruise on over to analytics. Our analytics extends not only to your activity in Microsoft Teams for your standard UC environment, but it also is going to work in the contact center. So you can actually leverage Microsoft Teams as your calling platform, make those calls, and we're still going to be able to gather all of that information in the contact center. And our contact center solution, this isn't going to be a deep dive into that, but I always like to mention it fully works in a side-by-side world with Microsoft Teams. And that Teams interface can be, as I said, that calling interface. Make your calls in Teams. It connects to the contact center, generates those screen pops, allows you to input data into that user profile, transaction codes, and then on to the next call. All right, next slide, please. And this is what I mean. We're going to quickly cover that global calling. I got to show maps too. I can't have Zoom, outdo me with maps here. We have PSTN replacement in these 38 countries. Yes. China, I know that's one of the hard countries to reach. This is expanding with, every quarter. So this continues to grow as part of our global strategy. Next slide, please. This is the over 120 countries that we're currently doing business in today. Some of these countries are gateway countries, what we call them, where you might have to leverage local PSTN, but we can install an 8x8 gateway so all of your users can be on 8x8 and continue to function. And this also works for our Microsoft Teams integration. Next slide, please. And here's a little picture of where those are. You can see the sort of dark blue, purple, 15 private data centers, and then our in gray, 8 public. And then we have announced a relationship with Oracle that has to do in and around our secure encrypted tunnel within our meeting solution. This was driven by our government clients, actually. They wanted an encryption key on both ends, and we developed that with Oracle to make that happen. And so I believe that is my last slide. Perfect. I went a few minutes over, but it looks like we have about some time here to answer some questions.
Very good. Well, thank you, Brian. Much appreciated there. Let me stop presenting here. Very good. Well, does anybody have any questions out the gate? I know that I have a couple on my end that I can start maybe on the Zoom side. What do you feel is the single greatest attribute to your success within the Zoom world? And Ken, if you could expand on that.
I mean, I think the single biggest success that Zoom has would just be our innovation, right? I think from the very beginning, 9 years ago, Eric, was constantly trying to innovate when he was at WebEx, and he decided that that wasn't good enough. And, and so when he left, I think it's an innovation that kind of keeps us going on a regular basis, right? As Brian mentioned, every day or every month, 8x8's adding more and more things to their platform. Well, so is Zoom, right? And Zoom is taking things very seriously. I think from that standpoint, it's the innovation that kind of keeps us going, which is, I think, one of our biggest biggest features.
And then on Brian, your side, on 8x8, how often are you having the collaboration conversation with Microsoft for clients? Like, how often is that conversation? And walk me through that. How does the client ultimately decide, am I going to go 8x8 natively, or am I going to go to Microsoft Teams with direct routing?
Yeah, great question. I would have said 6 months ago, maybe in half of small business, you would run into Microsoft Teams, and almost always in mid to enterprise level conversations. But today, it's literally every conversation has Teams. It's so pervasive. Microsoft predicts over 100 million Microsoft Teams users by the end of the year, if not very, very early next year. So it's in every conversation, and that's where we start. And unfortunately, the devil's in the details. So it's all about working with your partners like ATC, like your sales folks at 8x8, and we'll deep dive into your intent, what you're trying to do, and how do you get there, right? It's all about partnership, really understanding what it is you're doing today and where you're going in the future, because it's no longer a commodity sale. It's no longer like, hey, I just need this, give it to me. I want a number 2 with fries, right? That doesn't exist anymore. There's so much complexity with remote workers, how your communications flow through your organizations, how different teams work. It matters to understand what's going on today. And that's why partners like ATC are great to have in your corner.
Well, thank you for that. We've gone through this a whole bunch with clients, and we feel like it becomes, clients oftentimes feel that going Microsoft directly is going to be a lot less expensive venture for them and give them equal to functionality. And oftentimes, as we go through the evaluation process, it becomes more expensive, less functionality, and you're reliant on Microsoft for the support component, not only the day-to-day, I need to add users, change call flow, but you're also reliant from the standpoint of SIP trunking. And I know that we touched on that a little bit, but Microsoft has very limited SIP trunking capabilities globally, but even here domestically, there's only a handful of SIP providers within their environment. So if they have one issue with the SIP provider, you're oftentimes affected. With 8x8, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, how many SIP providers would you have in the domestic US?
Yeah, so we've built redundancy specifically with the Microsoft Teams solution, but then it speaks to 8x8 as a whole. So not only do we have local redundancy within a single data center, but we're going to have regional and then national redundancy. So in the US alone, I always forget the exact number, but it's I believe it's 3 on the East Coast and 2 on the West Coast, and then they're all redundant to one another. And then we have that global redundancy as well. So regardless of where you're at with the Microsoft solution, we're going to be able to provide not only that security in the communications, but reliability with that communications. And that's speaking more to the Microsoft solution than us globally. I went over that server map, right? We have a ton of reach, all redundant, not only in data centers, but to one another, as well as our proprietary geo routing solution. So we're always going to route you to the nearest data center for the best solution, or best quality, I should say.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up to the CIO circle. Any questions out there as it relates to these two vendors, or how the landscape in the market looks right now?
So there's was a question in chat, and we're getting close to the end of our time. So I think maybe it's a good way to kind of recap where we were. And I know you've kind of addressed this, but if you could each summarize, and we'll start, Brian, with you and then go to Ken. What are the 1 or 2 features or issues that companies should be considering that would say, add your platform to Teams from both a cost and a functionality perspective?
Yeah, great question. I would say it has to do with several things. Yeah, I put up that picture, right? Those 5 different things around Microsoft Teams. We're surrounding Teams and making it better. I think it's a shoe-in if there's contact center. I think it's also a shoe-in if you hit any 2 of those particular quadrants, right? Do I need depth and breadth in my enterprise telephony and in integration? Then it makes perfect sense, because you otherwise with Microsoft Teams, you have to leverage a third party. And sure, there's direct routing partners out there that you might be able to acquire for maybe a little bit more cost-effective approach. But now that's only helping you with enterprise telephony. It's not helping you with integrations. Now you're going to go to another partner for a third party to integrate with that particular software. So the real value in our story is contact center, and then any 2 of those particular quadrants makes it a shoe-in. Any other time, you really have to dive into the details about your calling flow, your redundancy, your reach, what sort of analytics you want. All of that could be a driving factor as well. But I think those are the slam dunks.
Great, thanks. And so we will send out your slides so everybody can go back, because I'm sure they don't remember the 5. And if they're like me, they weren't taking those kind of notes. So we'll send that stuff out. So Ken, how would you wrap up that kind of question?
I mean, I would also kind of go with what Brian is saying, right? I think, Microsoft has a really robust feature set, but when it comes to, the integrations, the telephony, the meeting side of things, that's where they're not nearly as strong. And so for us, I think Zoom's kind of pitches, if you're looking for the best in breed in the application space itself, with integrations, with the telephony, with the meetings, and that true enterprise global reach, that's where Zoom is your best fit. Microsoft has an amazing internal communication product. No one's going to touch that. I won't even bother with that. But when you're looking to look outside of that, right, we have full redundancy, both local, regional, and global as well. We have a huge reach with our, localization in 42 different countries, the ability to reach, again, as Brian was saying, just like Zoom, anywhere in the world we can get to, right? So we have that ability to offer that to our customer base. And so for me, it's about, leveraging that best of breed technology in both internal communication and with Zoom with your external communication for your customers and clients.
Great, thanks. So we are out of time. Thank you to all of you who have attended and stuck with us for the whole session here. We really appreciate it. Huge thank you to Zoom and 8x8 for teaming up with our fantastic partner ATC to bring this information to you, and we will be forwarding it out. So look for a note from me to have their slides here in the next few days. And if there are any other questions, don't hesitate to ping me, and we'll make sure to get that addressed and information sent out to you. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.